Hi there, I'm Stephanie Scheller, and you're listening to Black Belt Selling.
Welcome to Black Belt Selling with Stephanie and Anna Scheller. I'm Anna.
And I'm Stephanie.
We are a mother-daughter team who are passionate about helping you grow your business through sales and sales coaching. On Black Belt Selling, we bring you special guests. We bring people who really are here to help you grow your business in all the possible ways that you can. Now, you can learn more about us by going to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Black Belt Selling. There we post content. There we have amazing posts from our guests. More importantly, though, you'll know when these podcasts go live. So join us at facebook.com/groups/Black Belt Selling. Now, Stephanie, today's guest, he actually contacted me and wanted to be on our show. So people are actually finding us. Isn't that exciting?
What? We are that cool.
Woo! Yeah, we are. We're amazing. It only took us 4 years.
I know, right?
Overnight success. This is the overnight.
We should stop talking about this because everyone's going to be like, wait a second, we're about to talk about podcasting and we're telling them it takes 4 years. No one's going to want to do this.
Well, our guest is, I would call him Mr. Podcaster. His name is Rob Greenlee. Rob is the VP of Partnerships at Voxnest, which is a company that works to help manage podcasts. He also works with Spreaker.com. And for those of you who are listening on Spreaker.com, you know that we are on Spreaker. So we were just really blessed to have Rob talk. Now, Rob is one of the oldies but goodies in podcasting. He's been doing this a very, very long time. And so Rob is going to be sharing some important ideas that we're going to talk about at the end. But I really think it's important for you to listen, for people to really, especially if you're thinking about podcasting or you love podcasts, this is going to be a great episode. So Rob, welcome to Black Belt Selling. We're so glad that you could make it with us today. Hello.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your program here. I'm excited to join you and talk about some podcasting and learn more about you guys too as part of the interview. That was always the great thing about podcasts, is that I get to meet cool new people.
It's one of my favorite things about podcasting is just the amount of you run into so many different walks of life inside podcasting. So yeah, I do have to, I've been curious. I kept asking Anna this when I said, so our podcast is on Spreaker.com and you are like the head of Spreaker or something like that. How did that, where did Spreaker start? Where did it come from? And then how did you find us to be on here?
Well, actually, I'm not like the founder or anything like that of Spreaker. I've actually had a very long career in the podcasting medium itself. I used to work for Microsoft. I used to work for Podcast One. Started working in this medium back in 2004 and 5, actually, going way back, and have really worked on platforms. But I've been a long-term podcaster, and so my roots in this medium go really, really far back, and was one of the original kind of group of podcasts that actually started this medium back in 2004. So, wow. So I've been there at the very beginning and have seen this medium grow and develop over the last 14 years now. And it's really turned into something that's really been exciting, and it's steadily growing every year. And you can't say that about everything, that it continues to march along, and I've been fortunate enough to build a career in the podcasting area, working with content creators from all over the world, from the biggest media companies to the smallest ones, and helping them evolve and develop their programs, and while all along being a podcaster myself. I mean, I do 2 shows a week right now, and what I podcast about is, guess what, podcasting. So I'm very meta in this, and I've been that way for a long time. Back in my original radio show that I had, I did the radio show about the internet and the web, which is what I was using to distribute my show. So it's really kind of it's an exciting medium that has fantastic people in it, and that's the part that I've really enjoyed over the years.
Nice. So what podcasting, obviously you've seen it evolve, you've seen it change over the past 15 years or so. Where has it, where is it at today? Because that is something I know people who are still podcasting the same way, to my mind, used to podcast years and years ago. So what's this current state of podcasting? Where are we at right now?
Well, it depends on if you want to get into the numbers or not, but there's about 500,000 shows have ever been created globally in this medium,
Wow.
of which about half of them are currently active today. So if you look at it from that perspective, the vast majority of the podcast content that exists is being produced in the United States, but it's being listened to on a global basis. So but saying that doesn't mean that everything is about the US when it comes to podcasting. The expansion of podcasting is just a little bit behind in Europe and Australia and other countries around the world, and it's growing and developing at a much faster clip now than it has over maybe the last 10 years. So there is life outside of the US when it comes to podcasting, and more people around the world are embracing this medium and producing content for their local countries. And so you're seeing English content being consumed on a global basis, but then you're seeing local content that's typically produced by kind of native speakers producing content for their countries. Or if it's like Spanish, it can be listened to for, in a variety of countries out there. So that's the pattern that you're seeing on a global basis. And podcasting today is evolving into something that's really starting to permeate a lot of other media types too. So you're seeing a lot of or a growing number, might be a better way of saying it, of podcasts that started out as podcasts that are now being produced into TV shows, and being podcasts are being produced off of stories that were created for television and movies. And so you're seeing this cross-pollination of this medium that's happening, and it's a lot of it centered around storytelling, and a lot of activity that's going on down in LA and the Hollywood area, where there's just a lot of interest in the experience of podcasting. And I think one of the things that's kind of a little bit behind this is the less of a focus on social media. One of the reasons that there was a little bit of a dip in perceptions around the podcasting medium, this is back in the 2008 timeframe, 8-9 timeframe. It's exactly when Facebook and Twitter really started to take off, and there was so much attention driven to social media back in the early days of podcasting that it really kind of, it kind of put it in the back seat. It didn't put it up front, because YouTube and Twitter and these social platforms were in the front seat for much of the lifespan of podcasting. And so what we're seeing now is that a lot of that trust is starting to be eroded in social media. There's a lot of people that are having bad experiences over there. There's a lot of violation of privacy. Mm-hmm. And now we're starting to see people starting to pay attention to podcasting because it is a little bit more of a safer medium. And people are putting more energy into creating content here because it doesn't have that unsafe kind of data gathering and all this stuff that people are freaked out about these days. So you're seeing, now's the time for podcasting, and people are jumping on board with it in a greater and greater way. And the smartphone was one of the big catalysts for that. But then we're starting to see even the evolution of new listening experiences, like in-dash experiences in the car for podcasting, as well as the smart speakers that are coming out, like the Google Home and the Amazon Echo and Alexa devices, which are not currently driving a lot of audience right now. But if you look at the capabilities and where Amazon is going to point those technologies, they're going to be everywhere. They're going to be in your car. They're going to be in your bathroom. They're going to be in your kitchen. All those places that people like to consume content. So if you look to the future, I believe a lot more content will be consumed through those platforms in one way or another. But it's not happening yet, but it's a growing wave. So from a bigger perspective, that's kind of what's happening. From a platform perspective, the big entrance of Spotify is happening right now,
Mm-hmm.
They're getting involved in the medium. We're hearing a lot of rumbles out of Pandora that they want to fully embrace podcasting and build a kind of like a podcasting genome project, kind of like what they did for music. So there's a lot of interest coming out of those big platforms too that are reaching hundreds of millions of potential listeners.
Well, it's very fascinating. We started podcasting, Stephanie, almost 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Close to 4, yes. And it started out pretty organically. We were actually just doing a 15-minute deal where we were inviting people to join us on the conference line. Mm-hmm. And the guy who was our mentor at the time said, "You really ought to think about doing a podcast." And I'm like, well, how do you do a podcast? I don't know how to do a podcast. And so I just kind of Googled podcasting platforms. We found one, and we started podcasting there. And it's been a great way for us to meet a lot of people. So we've grown tremendously as a result of all the people we've interviewed. I mean, we've interviewed people from across the world. We've interviewed, and now we're starting to gain some traction where people are actually looking at us going, "Hey, we'd love to be on your podcast." Or before, I'd have to go begging, "Please come on to my podcast."
Now they're begging to be on your show, right?
Huh?
Oh, and now they're begging to be on your show. It's not like you're having to go out.
That's right. That's right. I actually have a list of people I have to get back to schedule interviews. And I mean, we've got more people wanting time than I've got in a month to. So we're in a good place now. I think, though, there's a real benefit to podcasting in terms of getting your content out and in advertising. What are the advertising trends in podcasting? Because to be honest, podcasting is a very inexpensive way to get your name out. Let's face it, it's very inexpensive. Spreaker's what, $15 a month?
Yeah, actually, we've got plans that are like $5.99, so you can get started pretty inexpensively.
We're on the $15 plan.
Are you? Well, thank you. Yeah. So as far as the advertising trends, I would say there are shows making money from advertising, Spreaker and Voxnest, which are the two companies that I'm working with. We are developing monetization programs to help shows make money from their podcasts, and those are being developed so they're more automated. They're not. They're using technologies like dynamic ad insertion, and we're trying to do all the ad sales for the shows so they can start earning money from what they're doing in their content. And then there's which tends to be kind of more, like I said, dynamic ads that are placed in your program in pre and mid-roll and post-roll positions. But then there's other advertising too in this medium. They're called host reads, which are advertising campaigns that are sold by agencies. Voxnest and Spreaker does this as well, but can sell advertising into a show where the host would actually do a host endorsement read, and they would get paid on a CPM model, which is basically a payment on a per thousand listener base. So those are the two typical advertising models that are out there. But I mean, people can get involved in advertising and podcasting from just doing affiliate programs too. You can go to like cj.com, which is commission.com, sign up for an affiliate program and get a promo code or something like that, and you can get started with a host read advertising in your own show and just get paid directly off an affiliate program. So a lot of podcasters kind of start out doing that if their goals is to be an advertising driven program. There's a variety of ways you can get into that, right? And there's different ad models too. So your ad, like on the dynamic ad insertion program I had mentioned earlier, that would be more like a radio-like ad. So that would be like a 15 or 30-second radio type spot that would play in your podcast, where the host reads are more voiced by the actual host of the program. And so those are, you as a podcaster, you have to decide which side of the fence you're going to live on. And some podcasters choose both sides. They can do the dynamic ad insertion plus they can do the host reads. It just depends on how much ad load you want to have in your show. around expectations that the audience has for how much advertising they're willing to put up with is the
Yeah.
honest truth, because you don't want to run your audience off, lose audience because you have too many advertisements in your show, and those advertisements need to be fairly relevant to the listener as well for them to stick around and navigate their way through it. So those are basically the three models that exist for advertising today, and they're all in various stages of development in the market. The ad agencies are still learning what type of spots work in podcasting. They tend to be open to host reads that tend to be a little bit longer than a traditional radio spot, but that's more like content, right? So you're blending content with content versus an ad spot on the radio side can be a little bit more like a pre-produced agency ad, which sounds quite different. So so that's the spectrum and how people, and there's other podcasters that aren't making any money at all on their show because they're trying to promote some consulting business or some other thing that they're doing. So
so the three trends, just to make sure I understand, they're the dynamic ads, which are pretty much the pre-formed ads by some kind of advertising agency. They're the host endorsements, which would be, let's say we did Starbucks. So Stephanie and I talk about how wonderful it is to sip Starbucks, essentially. And then there's the affiliate program where we promote somebody's product on our show, and then we get an affiliate commission as a result. Is that right?
Yeah. Those are the main advertising buckets. There is another approach that some shows take, and that's with a site called Patreon, which basically it's like a crowdfunding platform that you can basically create bonus content and offer that to a certain segment of your listeners, and they will pay you like a monthly fee to get access to that bonus content. So some models, and some shows do a donation model, so you can have those as options as well. And some shows do all these things. So it just depends. Like I say, it depends on how you've set your expectations with your audience. Trying to go into any of these can be a little bit of a jarring thing for your audience. So you need to be conscious of them and bring them along and get them to embrace what you're doing and keep them in mind when you're doing these things, just to make sure that you're not pushing audience away.
Right, exactly. And for those of you that are, maybe you're just listening on Spreaker itself, or you might be watching this on YouTube, Stephanie had a prior engagement, so she made it clear to us that she would just jump off. So it's just me and Rob for the next few minutes. I hope that's okay, Rob.
Oh, that's great.
Before we, there's one other thing I think that's really, really important, because so far we've been just talking to people that are probably comfortable with podcasting. My understanding is that podcasting is an extremely popular medium, particularly in the US, and that a lot of people listen to podcasts on their commutes. I know there's some podcasts that I particularly like to hook up with in areas that I don't necessarily have great expertise, but I want to stay on top of it, on top of the content. But for the person that's listening, that's maybe been toying with the idea, it's like, I don't know, boy, it seems just like a lot of work. What would you say to that person, and how could they get started in podcasting?
Well, I think that one of the big things that you need to think about when you're starting a podcast is how does this fit in with my life, for one thing. And a lot of podcasters, when they start, they don't really know how it's going to fit in with their life. So they need to really think about that. And then also just kind of set up a little bit in your mind. You don't have to do this deep planning or anything like that, but just get an idea of what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish by having a podcast. Is it something that you just want to do because you want to have fun and it's just a hobby of yours, or is it something more than that? Is it something that you're trying to build a consulting business? You're trying to build a reputation in a particular industry as an expert? I mean, just kind of get a rough idea of what your goals are, what you're trying to do. Are you trying to build a show that will bring in income for you off of advertising or selling some other product or service? some people will do like, like they'll do trainings or whatever, and other podcasters will actually take their show on the road and do it off of, live on a stage and sell tickets to their shows. So it's just a matter of getting kind of clear what you want to start doing. And you may change course, a month later, 2 months later, but at least have something to start with. And that the topic of the show needs to be also important too. It needs to be something that you have a passion for, that you will persist through the ups and downs of life, and be able to keep producing content every week. Because you have to think about it as a marathon run. It's not a sprint. I mean, some content producers in this medium think of, like Serial or whatever, where they produce like 13 episodes and then they take 3 months off or something like that. You can do that in this medium, but most podcasts are produced either daily or weekly or monthly. And it needs to be something that you can stay focused on and bring attention to on a regular schedule. So your audience, it's like appointment viewing, right? It's like on television. I mean, you're best if you can keep a regular schedule. Now, granted, if you can get enough people subscribing to you in the Apple listening platforms, they will get your episodes automatically. But this is kind of a subscription, somewhat of an appointment listening medium. So you need to think like that and get in sync with your audience, because they will carve out some time out of their weekly schedule to slot your show in. And if your show's not there when they have you slotted in, then you may have an upset listener. So, and they may not come back, or they'll find somebody else to go listen to. So it's one of those things. You're building a reputation, and you're building relationships with people, and you need to not disappoint them. And if you're going to do something outside of the norm, you need to let them know and involve them in that process. I think that's important. I mean, if you think about it, your audience is listening in their inner ear. It's a very intimate medium, and you as a podcaster, you need to think about that and position yourself. But as far as getting your show started, start out slow. Don't jump in too much. I know a lot of people and they've been advised to produce a bunch of episodes in advance of the launch of their podcast. But my advice is produce one episode, and then just launch with first a promo episode. I would just do like a 30-second promo of whatever show you're going to be. It's almost like an ad for your show, and put that up in your feed first, and then get your distribution built. The getting it in Apple Podcasts and iTunes and Stitcher and all these listening platforms that require at least one episode, and get that out there. Set a launch date, and then record your full episode and launch on that launch day, and build your social media around that. Make it an event that people will want to tune into. Is kind of my big advice.
Wow. Well, I think you covered a lot of information. I think a couple of the things that I'm seeing is that, sometimes we as podcasters can get very focused on ourselves and what we like. We really need to be sensitive to our listening audience. It's really the same thing about sales, because in sales, if you're not sensitive to the customer, then you're not going to make as many sales, because you can sell stuff, but you gain customers when you build relationship and you're tuned into their needs, their wants, what they're looking for. And I love how you were talking about building your social media around your podcasts. So I think those are all really great tips for people who are interested in getting started in podcasting. And I appreciate how it's so simple, because I heard the thing, we have to have 13 episodes ready to rock. And Stephanie and I looked at each other and said,
no, don't do that. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, after even 1 or 2 episodes, you're going to want to change what you're doing. So you're going to evolve and learn. And as you build audience, you're going to get more feedback from people, and you're going to listen to other podcasts, and you're going to get tips from other people, and you're going to want to change your format slightly, or you're going to want to do something a little different in your next episode because it didn't quite work right in the last episode. Because if you go in and you produce 5 in a row, right, on one day or something like that, then you're basically building that show off of the same model 5 times.
Yeah.
You may find out that after you pushed your first episode out, it didn't work as well as you thought it was going to, or it didn't come across as well as you want, and you want to change it. Guess what? You just produced a bunch of content that you didn't need to. So, and that maybe you're not going to use, so it's a gamble. I think you can do it, but I think it's safer to just do it one episode at a time and evolve and improve along that path.
Any final words for our listeners who would be, going, wow, that's really fascinating. I didn't know all of that about podcasting. I just thought you turned on your phone and listened.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it is just that simple. That's the thing. And I think as you look at the medium itself, I think that's key. It's been pointed out to me too that podcasting is something that's appealing to a wide range of age groups and demographics now more than ever. I mean, more young people are getting involved in this medium around creating stories and putting content together that's catering to, like the early 20s crowd. I don't know that we're catering to the teens quite as much in the medium, but younger people are definitely embracing the medium, as well as older people. This is a medium that's becoming a mass medium, and it's getting very close to 50-50 between men and women on the listening side and the content creation side. You're one of the examples. This medium had a lot of men with beards in it when it started, a bunch of geek techies. I was one of them, so I have to take full credit. And now that it's really opened up, and more women and minorities and ethnic groups and others that have different perspectives on the world are getting involved in this medium, and that's what's building the audience too. It's it's on both sides, and that's what's really exciting about podcasting, is that it's really becoming something that's important to millions of people's daily lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, Rob, maybe get more information, maybe start their podcast on Spreaker, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, I can be found on Twitter. I Twitter post quite often on podcasting, so I can be found there at Rob Greenlee, just with 2 E's. And I can also be reached via email. I know, so old school. It's basically rob@voxnest.com or rob@spreaker.com. You can reach me there. And I do have a personal website, and that's robgreenlee.com. So.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much for being our guest. It was an honor to have you join us today on Spreaker.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Anna, for having me on. I appreciate it. And I wish you the most luck with your show here too. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That was awesome. I have got to say, so podcasting has been such a journey for you and I. We have learned, we have grown, we have stumbled, we have fallen down, we have grown. I think back to some of our first podcasts, and I feel like they were probably super awkward. And thank God for all of our followers who have stuck with us. Thank you. Thank you guys.
There you
go.
go.
Who followed us and
There
stuck with
you
us.
go.
And of course, thank God for that too, because grace, right? But no, it's been cool. It's been cool to see the reach that has come out of the podcast, not just the reach, but the leads. We've had people go to the website and just, hey, I was listening to your podcast, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you have a ticket sold. It's like, oh, cool. That's awesome.
Well, I think Rob did a really good job of sharing about how important podcasting is. You know, I never realized it. We started podcasting just as, oh, okay, that's what our mentor recommended that
Right.
we do. So we did. And, you know, I do listen to those original podcasts and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did those. But, you know, everybody has to start somewhere. The thing I thought that was most fascinating was I did not realize that there were over 500,000 shows that have been produced since the mid 90s. Of course,
Yeah.
smartphones have made it so much easier to do podcasting. And the reason they were called podcasts is because they were up on the what? iPods, right?
Right. I know. Think about it, and it is really cool to think about that for a second, right? Podcasting has transformed. It has shifted for sure. So has, you know, the routes that we listen to it. We are still listening to it on our, you know, basically on our phones or, you know, iPods, versions of the iPods, whatever. But it's come a long way. But when you think about it, it still comes down to what he talked about. It's still about the story. It's still centered on storytelling. It's still about the story. It's still about connecting with your audience.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, something that he mentioned toward the end of the conversation with us, Stephanie, and I really never thought about it, but it is an intimate form of conversation, and it is a tremendously powerful way to build relationships with people. So if somebody I'm working with, or somebody that's in a mastermind group is having trouble with a specific area in their sales, a lot of times what I'll do is I will look through our shows and I will find a really good interview about that particular topic, or one where we were giving content, because this is a way we have to help people that's free to them, and they can see the kind of value that we can give them. You know, we try to be very listener focused. As a matter of fact, if you're listening now, if there's something you want to hear on black belt selling, please let us know. These are there for you. They're not for us. You know, to
Right.
be honest, we could do other things with our time, but these we do for our listeners. We do it for the people who are really engaged with us. And I didn't even realize it, but can you believe Pandora and Spotify now are looking to create space for podcasts on their platforms?
I think that speaks to how far podcasting is going. Media consumption shifted through places like YouTube, Spotify, Pandora. I remember Pandora being this big deal way back when it first started. And to think about that for a second, how much has how we consume media transformed if these major players that completely disrupted how media was consumed before are now getting into the podcast field. Think about the potential. We talk about, you know, riding out, if you're surfing, ride out to meet the wave. I think that's where we're at with podcasting, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I'm actually reading a book by a guy named, you might know him, Mike Michalowicz, called Surge, and Mike is going to be our guest on a future podcast. But he talks about how do you get out in front of the wave, because if you're behind the wave, it's too late. Anybody that knows surfing knows you got to get out in front of the wave to catch the wave, and podcasting is definitely a way to do that. Now, let's talk about what if somebody's interested in getting started on the podcast. First of all, nobody's going to be threatened by your podcast. If they are, they're small in their thinking.
Right.
But if you're considering doing podcasting, Rob brought up some extremely valuable points for you to consider as to getting started. And the first one was you need to have some really important goals. You know, what are your goals when it comes to podcasting? Is it going to be just a hobby?
Yeah.
You could do for that.
And I really, what I liked about him bringing up these items was, I think when people start thinking about doing podcasting, they get caught up in the how-to, in the details. Well, how am I going to record it? Where am I going to post it? How am I going to distribute it? And that's important, but it's not as important as knowing, you know, what's the purpose? Who are you talking to? Right? Know who your audience is. What are you an authority on? What's your topic? Like, what are you talking about? You know, not to bang on us, right? But sales is a huge topic. And so the fact that we've been doing this for 4 years and still haven't run out of content is, you know, speaks volumes, I think.
Volumes indeed. Well, you know, and you have to think about, I'm going to tell you, don't do it the way Stephanie and I did it though, although you do want to get started. But now that we've been doing this for 4 years, we learned a great deal by listening to Rob, you know, talking about, you want to think about how do you distribute, how are you going to promote your podcast, and don't look at the size of your following. Maybe you have a small following, but even if you do have a small following, don't let that deter you. Simply make a plan, because there are people that need to hear what you have to say. There are people that need to hear about sales, that people need to hear about marketing, all kinds of things, and they need to hear it in your voice.
Right. Don't ever, this is not, there's 100 podcasts out there about your topic already. Your job is to find the people who are truly connected to you and who want to learn it from you. That's the whole point.
Exactly, exactly. So, you know, listen to this podcast again on podcasting. It was really a very powerful one. Rob actually joined us on USA Biz Party one night just to talk about podcasting. It was really, really powerful stuff that he shared. But more importantly, if you want to connect with Rob, you know, you can find him on social media. So you can go to rob@spreaker.com. You can connect with him there, or you can find him at Twitter. And guess what his handle is? It's Rob Greenlee on Twitter.
Well, or I have a really cool idea.
What?
You could join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Black Belt Selling, and we can connect you to Rob. I know, never would have thought of this. I really do want to encourage you guys. This was, I enjoyed this podcast. How about you, Anna?
Oh, absolutely. Rob was very personable, and he's been in podcasting forever. So he was a wealth of information, and we were really glad to have him.
Yeah, he was great. So for our listeners out there, if you've been thinking about going out and doing some podcasting as a way to set you up as the authority, as a way to, you know, generate leads, now's the time to jump on it. Listen to this podcast again, join the group, and see if you've got questions, post them in there, communicate with us. We love talking to you. The whole point of this podcast is to talk to you. So give us the chance to talk with you. In the meantime, always remember, your life is created. It is a conglomeration of the choices you make or choose not to make. So make great choices and make it a great life.